Strict parenting in some cases can be a good thing. Bringing your child warmth, security, schedule, purpose, and opportunity are some of the most important things you can do for them. But what do you indirectly create when attempting to craft perfection? The answer is something much less extraordinary than perfection. Something below average. Something that resents every fiber of your being. This is the story of Jennifer Pan. Jennifer Pan was born on June 17, 1986, in Toronto, Canada. Her younger brother, Felix, was born 3 years after her in 1989. She was birthed to parents Bic Ha and Hui Han Pan. They both worked at Magna International at the time. They also worked extensively, but made quite a decent wage. Jennifer, as a child, was subjected to a lot of activities that she probably didn't want to partake in, such as piano lessons and figure skating classes, things that she was forced to participate in by age 4. She attended various Catholic schools during her upbringing as well, and was surprise, forced to partake in playing an instrument, in this case, the flute. During this time, and during her early teen years, she was monitored quite strictly. She wasn't allowed to attend middle or high school dances, wasn't allowed to have sleepovers, wasn't allowed to date boys, wasn't allowed to watch TV, wasn't allowed to play video games. It was almost as if her parents thought of her as an investment, instead of a conscious human being. A style of parenting I heavily disagree with, for reasons you're about to see. It should be noted that during her high school years, she was so desperate to not be seen as a failure in the eyes of her parents that she was known to forge her report cards to give her parents the impression that she always got straight A's. Now honestly, her childhood sounds pretty oppressive, but doesn't sound too extraordinarily strange for a child born into a family like hers. However, it starts to get strange when you find out that Jennifer's parents kept up this tiring and rigorous parenting style long after Jennifer had turned 18. In 2004, when Jennifer was 18, her and her family moved to a residence that was mostly populated by Asian people. Her parents had over $200,000 in savings at this point, and owned their own home and drove quite fancy vehicles. However, unbeknownst to Jennifer's mother, this was the home she'd die in. At this point in Jennifer's life, she had failed out of high school and was pretending to attend the University of Toronto, a facade she kept up for a long time, when in reality, she was working 2 jobs for income, one job as a pizza parlor employee, and another job as a piano teacher. She also lied to her parents by saying she was staying with a friend near campus so she could be closer to the school, when in reality, she was actually staying with her boyfriend. I should probably explain who he is. In high school, Jennifer met a man by the name of Daniel Chi-Kwang Wong, a man who Jennifer would eventually start to date. This man is the very reason Jennifer got into this mess. Daniel was a drug dealer, though quite a small one, as he only dealt with light substances, though what made him dangerous and a huge component to later events were his contacts. But we'll get into that later. By the time Jennifer was in her early 20s, her facade was starting to be more and more clear to her parents. When she announced that she was going to be working as a volunteer at a really hard-to-get-into hospital for children with terminal illnesses, something that wasn't true at all. Her mother noticed that Jennifer didn't possess any badges or outfits for that kind of work, and her suspicions led her to follow Jennifer to work one day. When Jennifer was found to be lying, her parents threatened to kick her out, though an ultimatum was eventually worked out to where Jennifer could stay with her parents, as long as she went back to complete high school and went to university for real. Even though she was in her early 20s, she was still barred from contacting her boyfriend, who her parents now knew about, and was only allowed to attend her job as a piano teacher, and then come home. At this point, Jennifer had never gotten drunk, never attended a single party, and was incredibly socially awkward due to the lifestyle her parents imposed on her, and at this point, she had had enough. She was still in contact with her boyfriend, and around this time, came up with the idea that if she managed to get her parents killed in a non-suspicious way, she'd be free to live the life she wants to, and she'd get a fat $500,000 life insurance check. Her journey to accomplish this started off quite shakily. Her first move was to hit up a troubled kid from her high school who used to brag about committing robberies and the like, and pay him $1,500 to snuff her father out in the parking lot of his workplace. He refused the offer, which is pretty rational, especially considering that she was trying to hire a hitman for less than $1,500. Now, while I originally did have sympathy for Jennifer, at this point, her irrational state of mind rules out all sympathy I may have had. There were many ways she could have accomplished total freedom without hurting a single person, but sadly, she chose a path that would ruin her entire life. After failing the first time, Jennifer started planning ways to accomplish killing her parents with her boyfriend. The two eventually came in contact with a man named Eric Carty, who contacted another man named David I'm not even gonna try to pronounce that name, who was known to be a hitman. Jennifer gave this man 10 grand, and then a plan was set in motion. On November 8th, 2010, Pan left her front door unlocked and went up to bed before giving her contract killers the okay to commence the operation. Shortly after, 3 men entered the home with an assortment of firearms. They ransacked the house and bounded Jennifer's parents before taking them to the basement, where they were both shot point blank. Jennifer's mother unfortunately had been terminated, though fortunately, her father, Han, survived and was taken to a hospital once police arrived at the scene. He was in critical condition, but managed to pull through and survive. Pan was entirely unharmed, and only was robbed for the small amount of money she had on her. Even though Pan managed to set up this elaborate scheme, she wasn't very smart and was quite childish in many ways. The next 2.5 weeks for Jennifer were filled with intense police interrogations. On November 22nd, Jennifer was arrested during her final interrogation, where she pretty much confessed to everything. The best part is, she didn't have to, and could have easily gotten away with this. The reason she confessed was because the interrogator lied about having a computer software that could analyze untruths in her statements, and that there were infrared lasers pointing at her house, tracking her every movement. So essentially, anything she said that was contrary to the data that they had obtained would be instantly detected as a lie. Jennifer and everyone involved in the incident were immediately taken into police custody. Their trial was short and sweet, to put it lightly. All were sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 25 years. On top of this, her father put in a court order to bar Jennifer from ever talking to her family again. Jennifer is housed to this day at the Grand Valley Institution for Women. Everyone else involved was sent to a different prison, and Cardi, the man who got the original hookup for the hitman, was found dead in his cell on April 26, 2018. Overall, the story of Jennifer Pan is an incredibly sad one that highlights the dangers of overprotective parenting. That being said, her parents didn't deserve what came to them at all. Did they maybe deserve to be chewed out for their selfish parenting style? Maybe, but is it rational to, at 24 years old, have 3 armed men ransack your house and shoot your parents point blank in the basement? The lack of empathy and emotion seen in Jennifer, mixed with her violent capabilities, are what make her so dangerous. She most definitely deserves to spend a long time behind bars. There are a lot of people who empathize with Jennifer, considering her parents were obviously mentally abusive. But it's very important to note that this was an honor killing. Jennifer had the money to leave and go start her own life. She was over 21 years of age. There was no excuse for what had happened to occur. The killings were entirely based on her ego. She was so caught up in her own ego, she was willing to kill just to satisfy that need to not be seen as a failure. But as irony would have it, her actions resulted in her being seen as a massive failure, so much so that she was barred contact from her own family. Yes, her backstory may be sad, but once you cross a certain line, no one really cares how you got there. I think the worst part is, she couldn't think of any better way to do this. She killed her parents in the most sad, violent, and scary way possible. Imagine being kidnapped in your own home, taken to the basement by 3 men, and then shot point blank. Imagine being her father, surviving the whole situation, and watching your wife die before your very eyes, before realizing it was your own flesh and blood who caused the whole situation in the first place. That is true suffering, and I do not feel bad for Jennifer Pan. The story is not all that uncommon. I mean, the killings are very uncommon, but I'm referring to a child that has the urge to kill his parents because of how overprotected he is. You never know who could be the next Jennifer Pan. You could be sitting next to him at school. You could be talking to him at McDonald's behind the counter. They could even be your own brother.